Good evening. Hundreds more jobs are being lost at the region's biggest local authority. The leader of Birmingham City Council is warning tonight of the most severe cuts in its history. He's blamed a reduction in government funding amounting to £149 for every person in Birmingham. Well, today's announcement means that 1,080 jobs are to go in the next 2 years. The amount that the council needs to save by 2017 has increased to £840 million. A workforce of 21,000 is now down to 14,000, and that's a reduction of a third. Bob Hockenhull reports.
A year ago, Birmingham's council leader warned the city was staring into the jaws of doom. Today, he said those jaws had widened. More than 1,000 posts will go by April 2015. It's not just those who'll be made redundant losing out.
I'm talking here about community libraries, neighbourhood centres, advice activity, which residents are very much in need of. So there is a whole range of cuts here which are going to be significant for different categories of people, residents and indeed businesses.
Posts from park keepers to pest controllers, from librarians to leisure centre managers are under threat in this latest round of cuts. Only those working in children's services will be protected. The council says a 40% reduction in government funding is to blame for the cuts, but the government insists it has delivered a fair deal which protects frontline services. Opposition party leaders on the council believe Labour has got its spending priorities wrong in Birmingham.
Why aren't they willing to look at reducing services in the back office, things like the Human Resources Department or the Legal Department or consultants? They're spending a huge amount of consultants.
The council effectively should be managing its budgets better, cutting out the vanity projects such as wheelie bins. We can't afford them at the moment, and on top of that, using its balances.
The unions have described today's announcement as horrendous but almost inevitable.
It doesn't come as a shock, but it will come as a shock to the people of Birmingham that their services are being effectively wrecked by central government.
The gloomy outlook could get even worse, warns the council, with services that are currently protected also facing cuts in future years. Bob Hockenhull, BBC Midlands Today.
While announcing the cuts, the council said that in future it won't be able to run many of the services provided in the past. Volunteers could step in to take up the slack. But will that work? And what do communities stand to lose if it doesn't? Giles Latcham reports.
I'm really keen to take messages back on here.
Standing Up for Birmingham, they call it, an event organised by the council intended to inspire volunteers to step up as they step back. People like Roger, who wants to buy local playing fields to provide sports facilities.
It really opens up the door for community and voluntary sector groups to step up to the plate and say, OK, well, we can get involved, we can do stuff on behalf of the local community.
I'm a volunteer, nobody pays me to be here.
But how much can we expect from volunteers like Emma, who devotes hundreds of unpaid hours to running her neighbourhood park?
If it's maintained, it has no insurance impact at all, does it?
The cuts announced today would mean more park rangers and keepers losing their jobs, and she says they can't do it all on their own.
I mean, it's not like a leisure centre. You can't mothball a park. You can't not look after it. It will become, I don't know, it will go back to being the field it once was. So I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but the answer is getting volunteers to help, but the volunteers can't do it with no infrastructure behind them.
Up the road, though, a pool and gym which may well be mothballed. Hundreds of kids learn to swim here. It's one of 9 slated for closure. The council says it will build 6 new leisure centres.
It is fair to blame a local authority that was voted in recently on the basis of defending public services. And what they've done is the exact opposite. They're not standing up to central government whatsoever.
I just see the attack on the cuts is affecting ordinary people, not the middle class, not the upper class, the working class.
Round the corner, one of 39 libraries in the city that could face closure or transfer to local community groups.
Some of it might be about handing over whole services to communities and using that as an opportunity to give people control over something that really matters to them in their lives. So I think there are some positives to come out of this. It isn't all a negative story.
Sunset or new dawn, one way or another, the landscape of local government is changing. Giles Latcham, BBC Midlands Today, Selly Oak.
Well, John Hemming is the Liberal Democrat MP for Birmingham Yardley and a former city councillor. A little earlier, I asked him if, as a member of the coalition, he agreed with these cuts.
if the country had wanted to not be in a mess in 2010, it would have required different policies from 2005 to 2008. And given those policies between 2000 and 2005 to 8, which Tony Blair himself said were wrong, inevitably we face cuts across the country. And I think now the Labour Party nationally accept that they will go at least with the first year after the general election if they were to end up in government. So
but you can't keep blaming the previous government. I mean, the workforce has been cut by a third, from 21,000 to 14,000 in the last 3 years. Your government is very keen to stress the recovery is well underway, but that's not the case if you work in the public sector or rely on council services, as many of your constituents do.
But we have to bring the deficit under control. Basically, the government is spending a lot more money than it gets in tax every year. And what we're doing is gradually reducing that difference. But it won't be in balance till about the year 2018.
But this is going to make a huge impact on your constituents. Yeah, how are you going to explain it to them?
There is an inevitability to all of this. Whoever was in government nationally would have to have a policy of austerity. The only way we could have avoided it happening is by having different policies between the years 2005 and 2008. Those having been set, we're stuck. We've not, at the end of the day, we're doing a lot better than places like Greece or Spain, which have had much more serious cuts.
So are you comparing us to Greece? I'm a little confused. It sounds as though, well, this is the situation, tough, you've got to get on with it. And we're talking about a huge reduction in council services here. Your constituents will be affected.
Yeah, but the point is our deficit, the amount of money the government spent that it didn't get in income as a proportion of gross domestic product was about the same order of magnitude as that in Greece. It was that big a problem.
How can you maintain services when a budget needs to be cut by the amount that it needs to be cut by, which you have acknowledged?
Again, at the end of the day, you have to be more efficient in the way you do things. One of the things we did, for instance, was to reduce the staffing levels in libraries whilst keeping them open. And that's not an unreasonable sort of thing to do.
But we're talking about losing a further 1,000 jobs here. You can't do that just by losing a few library staff.
A lot of jobs have been lost over time. There's nothing particularly new in all of this.
OK, John Hemming, thank you. Well, there's plenty more to come tonight, including